Tony, all of the senior guys have talked about how the non-basketball component of kind of the game was important in their choosing Virginia, either a connection with you or the values of the program. How important was it for that class that you've referred to as kind of the builders and foundation of what you've been growing to be of a like mind or have those shared values?
Yeah, I think it was essential. All those guys, what they represented. When you're building a program, you're going to go through, we've talked about this before, a lot of adversity, a lot of hard times. And then even when you have success, they're still there, and you have to handle different things. But you need the kind of guys that you can go through adversity with. And we've talked about that before, that you can lose with first before you win. I'll never forget, I've said it before, my father at his press conference when he took the Washington State job, he said, first I have to recruit a group of young men I can lose with first before I win. And it sounds strange, but a lot of times when I'm watching players, watch them play, and I ask myself that question: can I lose with Malcolm Brogdon? And I sometimes even look up in the stands. I always try to see their parents or who's watching and say, are these the kind of people that I can lose with, that I can go through hard times with, that they'll stick with it, and then they'll learn from that wisdom that they'll receive and apply it and eventually become successful. And I think that's significant in building a program. And all of those guys have had their shares of ups lately, but they've also had their shares of downs, and they've just stayed true to that kind of character, that kind of commitment to what matters. That's the character-based kind of model that we try to get, and that's kind of where it starts. As awkward as that sounds, or as strange as that sounds, can you go through adversity with them? And they have that, but they value the whole experience. Virginia is a unique place in terms of the academic expectations, what's required, what we're trying to do in a league that was special, the ACC, and build it. And I think they were excited about that opportunity to come and maybe make Virginia relevant and try to be really good basketball-wise, but setting themselves up with an education that'll last. Yep.
Let's get CL.
I won't answer that long for all the questions, I promise.
CL Brown, ESPN.com. Tony, 2 years ago, you guys came in here as a #1 seed. In what ways do you see the program being different and this particular team being maybe more equipped to handle everything that comes with that?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. One thing, Mike Tobey was on my radio show a couple weeks back, and they asked him, what's changed from your first year to your last year? And he said, well, our first year we were watching ESPN wondering, are we in, are we out, are we a bubble team? And he said, now this year it's like, well, are we going to be a 2 seed or a 1 seed, which kind of shows you where the program's come, and this is the second time that he's been in that. There's no substitute for experience. I've mentioned this before, because we've lost some tough ones early. We haven't been able to live off of our success as we had in the past, kind of winning the conference and then winning the conference tournament. We came up short in both, had successful years. I think that's really taught us how close to the line it is. And I just think we're healthy right now. And the guys, we've played some tough games, and certainly respect Hampton and knowing that you've got to be right in this thing to advance. And so I think our guys understand that. But just they've had such good careers. They really have. And this is the last piece of it. No guarantees, but that they can, want to do well and finish it off the right way, because they've really built something special. Regardless of how this plays out, it can't be taken away what they've established for Virginia basketball.
Ron, do you have a question?
Tony, how much do you have someone on your staff who handles statistical analysis? And how detailed are your scouting reports now? And how much has that changed since you first got in the business?
It has changed a lot since I've gotten in the business. But yeah, we do. I know what I look at quality. Like I'm more into, I just kind of maybe a little more old school, but we certainly rely on it. Everybody's using synergy. Everybody's looking at, points per possession and how many times this team does that or this player goes to the low post, pick and rolls, pick and pops. So you use all that stuff. And I think we use video in creative ways, but that's an important part of the game. But I think we have a pretty good balance. I'd say I listen to it, I look at it, but I still like watching things, and I'm more about, are we getting quality shots on offense? Are we making the opponent shoot contested shots, whether they go in or not? And so sometimes that doesn't add up on statistical categories. So I look at that. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but we definitely use it. And a couple of our guys are really looking into it, a couple of our video coordinators and things like that.
One person provides the statistics, or
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our staff does. There's not one guy who's our statistics guy. I mean, we've got a couple of our assistant video coordinator and then, our recruiting coordinator who are working on stuff, and you use Ken Palm. You use different, there's so many different things you use, but you look at them just to see if there's any tendencies. We have our own things we stat that matter to us that probably wouldn't matter to other teams that I look at and say, all right, what's our percentages on these things that I value? And I kind of use those.
Okay, David, we got a question right up here on the side.
Coach, how you doing? I read a quote from your dad a couple years ago about the 2000 team that went to the Final Four, that maybe he got a little too intense on them once they got to the Final Four.
Not my dad. Intense? Come on.
Is there anything you can take from that in a NCAA tournament situations and not put too much pressure on the guys?
Well, he got him to the Final Four, didn't he? So I think he did okay. He was intense. You have to be who you are. I think you rely on your experience. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. I think I heard Bill Self. They interviewed him at the selection show and what makes for a team that's ready and to make a run. And he said, got to be healthy. Your best players have to play well. He said, of course, you got to be prepared. He said, you got to make some shots. He talked about that. And he said, you got to play. You got to be freed up to play. You got to be ready and focused, but you have to be freed up to play. And I just think there's a balance. And you can overanalyze things, but, we know how quickly this thing can end, and we know how good who we're playing is, and you just battle it possession by possession with the right mindset. And I don't think you change a whole lot from what you're doing in the season, but our guys understand the significance of things.
Okay, Coach, we got Dave down the middle there.
Hey, Tony. Dave Johnson from the Daily Press. I was wondering if you could comment on what you've seen of Hampton's transition game, and in particular, Reggie Johnson.
Terrific. Statistically speaking, they're averaging around almost 90 possessions a game, that's impressive. They get up and down the floor fast, and then even when you're back in set, they have shot makers. They're older than us. Their top 6 players are all seniors or transfers. One of our players played with Quentin at Tennessee, Darius Thompson, and they have their perimeter guys are good, but Reggie is playing at a high level because he can manufacture his own shot. He's real strong. You look at him on tape and you see that. And you see how physical he is. Gets his shot off quick. Gets to the rim pretty complete. So, but he's not the only one. So again, they like to get it up. They have playmaking ability, and you have to be back and make them earn. That's kind of what we try to do all the time against the guys in our league like him. And he's got some special abilities, and he's been through a lot.
Okay, can we go to Kip up here a little bit, Eric?
Tony, Kip Coons for the Raleigh News and Observer. Can you tell me in what ways has Malcolm Brogdon improved and expanded his game for you, especially the last 3 years since his injury year?
Yep.
And how that maybe validates your program and that people look for gaudier stats?
I think anytime a guy gets injured and has to sit out, he talks about that. It made him appreciate the game. It's humbling. It gives you a perspective that you don't take things for granted. So from that standpoint, that's been significant. I've heard Malcolm say that many times, and he's lived that out. But rarely do you see a player of his ability in their last year and his 5th year improve as much as he did. I mean, he already was a first-team All-ACC player, efficient, good stats, but he's really gotten better this year with his movement without the ball. Of course, his leadership I've seen on the court, but verbal leadership and in practice. But guarding the ball, rebounding, even if they don't show statistically, he's learned to let the game come more and be even more efficient. And I didn't know he'd be able to make that kind of jump in his game, being as experienced as he was. So I just think he understands and knows what's going on, and he's developed. He's a guy that works. He's really driven. I've coached a lot of guys. He's one of the top 2 or 3 I've ever seen that is driven to makes his game better in the off season and during the season, what he works on, what he thinks about, how he approaches it. And that's impressive. And then you take into account what he's doing academically, getting his master's in public policy and the things that he's about there. That just adds to it. So I think that's the stuff that has impressed me about him. You're right, his progression every year, and especially this last year.
Right there, Tom.
Todd Divers from the Washington Times. Do you reference the Coastal Carolina game anymore, or is that something that's so far behind this group that it doesn't have any impact on what's going
Yeah,
on.
no, I mean look, we played Coastal Carolina and Belmont. Now we play Hampton. You got to play. These teams can play, and I think that's the experience. You got to know just because we're a higher seed and they're a lower seed, throw that stuff out. All the seeding is it's a reward for having a really good, for us, a really good season and a good conference season, conference tournament finishing second. And then now it's about playing, and the way college basketball is this year with the balance, it's there. So, yeah, we know we're going to have to play, and just was talking about Hampton's ability and their veteran experience and the fact that they won a game last year in the tournament. This isn't new to them. So it's about playing at a high level for the majority of the possessions throughout the game.
Coach, we're back here on our right.
Mark Wicker, Los Angeles Daily News. Just wanted to ask you to go back to when London first got there, and in those practices or going into that first year, when did you realize that he could handle that as a freshman running this team, and then what it's been like since?
Yeah, London, he when I saw him, when we recruited him, play in the summer with his AAU team, you saw something in him. It's just his feel, his IQ. He's a neck-up player, as we like to say. But he was really good in practices, and he injured his shoulder. We thought he was going to be done for the year. We thought he had separated his shoulder. It was a real bad injury. Justin Anderson, I remember, fell on him, swelled up, and so he was out for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember how it all of a sudden changed the dynamics of our team. We were laboring in the practices. It was before our first games, actually, but we didn't look the same at all. And it was him. I mean, he just stirred the pot. He made everything kind of work out. He got guys the ball. He understood it. Plus, he shot the ball well. And he had a decent knowledge of the defense. And then when he got back and got more experience, it took our team, I think, to another level. So pretty early on, he just kind of had it in terms of that moxie and that feel that you want your point guard to have. And, in this year, I think he's taken a step. He's become more assertive and looking for his shot when it's there, and he understands what needs to be done.
Any other questions? All right, Coach, thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow.